Excellent. Okay, so then, yes, we are. Here we are. Hi, everyone. We are here with Dr. Abi Weissman from
Yay.
San Diego, California. And today we are going to talk about topics related to adult ADHD, things about getting the diagnosis, understanding that, coming to terms with it. And really particularly, is this something you feel about disclosing to other people in your life? And how do you do that and may come up with that? So Abi, thank you so much for joining us today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
How is life in lockdown out in San Diego right now?
It's quiet. We have a backyard, which I am very grateful for. So if you hear the occasional scream of a toddler, it's because she's inside now.
Awesome. Awesome. And how's she doing? She's
2 in a little bit. I don't know. She's kind of getting closer to three-nager stage. I don't know if lockdown's really so good for her, but she's awesome.
Well, starting off, tell us a bit about your practice and the work that you do.
Okay, let's see. So practice. I love it. I work with let's see. I always have this question at the forefront. I'm like, this is how I'm going to answer it. And then someone asks me this question and I'm like, I don't know, let's answer a different way. But we do depth work with in a trans and queer centered way. So we tend to work with people who identify as trans or queer, and it could be those who love them, and we work on whatever's going on for them. But the people that come in through the door tend to be trans identified, struggling with some identity stuff, or, you know, how the world used to say how the world is crumbling through 45, but now I have like lots of other examples
about how the world is crumbling around us. And when you say depth work, can you tell us a little bit about like what that means to you and how you understand like what depth work is as opposed to other kinds of therapy work?
Yeah, I can try. I mean, I'm assuming that people are going to come in at least once a week and that are going to stay until the work is done for whatever that looks like for them. And so we're really going to get in there, and with their permission and their, you know, their consent and their wholehearted, possible, you know, reticent excitement to really talk about what happened with them as a kid and what did they learn from their early childhood experiences. And then we're going to keep going from there. What did they learn about their environment growing up and how does that impact them? And then we're also going to be integrating things about power and privilege and different dynamics that are coming up within the world today.
Awesome.
Little psychodynamic.
So this isn't like a quick hit. People come in for like, one quick problem, like, couple of weeks, and then back out the door you go. You're talking about establishing kind of long-term relationships with people to work on kind of deeper, intense stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, some people feel better a lot sooner. And they're like, I'm good for now. And I'm like, that's cool. Like, go. I don't want you here forever. Like, I want you here as long as you feel like there's something to work on, or you're in a spot where you feel like you can. If you feel good and you're happy with where you're at, like, hit the road.
Yeah.
Like, I'm happy to have you go and frolic and be your joyful self. It tends to be that there's a lot of complexity and it's hard to kind of unpack what's going on. And so at least it tends to be about 2 years, 1 to 2 years.
Okay. Awesome.
But I've also only been in licensed practice in 4 years. So I don't know what the future will be.
So today, I know I gotta get my therapist.
You have your therapist,
the therapist, which is we're not supposed to touch our faces right now, which is really tough. I'm modeling poor behavior, unfortunately. And then I got this thing that kind of gets in the way of that therapist contemplates.
Yeah, it's like.
But so today I wanted to talk a little bit about aspects of adults with ADHD and sort of coming to terms with that diagnosis. Can you tell a little bit about like your experience, whether personal, clinical, in working with adult ADHD?
Where should I start? I was diagnosed with ADHD when I was in my last year and my graduate program. I had matched to an ideal placement. It was APA. It was like the highest accreditation you could get. And I was like, felt like I was living my best life.
Mhm.
And the world kind of went down because something was wrong and I didn't know what it was. And I knew that my, all the people in the APA placement weren't happy with me. And therefore I was miserable. But I didn't know why. I was working so hard and I just wasn't working in a way that they could see it. They felt like I wasn't doing anything. And I was like, but I'm doing all the things.
So it started with people being frustrated with you?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Frustrated and confused. Like, did you ever have this problem before? What's going on with you? And I was like, I must be living in an alternative reality. Like, yeah, I've had problems completing paperwork, but no one's ever had a problem with like clinical skills. Like, what are you talking about? I just need a quiet place to work. And the more you interrupt me, the more frustrating it is. Like, just, go away and I'm cool. Like, I got this. But I was spending so many extra hours working. And then I'd get kind of lost in my own land and I'd be like, wow, I'm going to research this great intervention. And then, 4 hours later,
rabbit holes.
Yeah, I was still there. And they were like, well, what have you done on your notes or your whatever? And I'm like, oh, but I found this great idea. So I had no idea.
And I mean, getting through to the doctoral level of education, it's not like schoolwork had been probably a made problem in your life. So this must have been a really different new experience. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I knew that like, I always liked the complicated math problems. And so I was like, yeah, like I need to go to calculus, like whatever. I don't know what else is going on. I don't know like the basics of it, but I need the complicated in order to get through. I think that they're the most fun. So I spent a lot of time, I think, earlier trying to find the most fun by getting the most complicated. And that was a great coping strategy until it wasn't, because I had the pre-doc, I found out now, is more like a postdoc where they expected us to be kind of like licensed professionals who just happen to need hours instead of like,
So with all of this going on for you and the frustration that people were feeling, did you sort of, did ADHD, was that kind of on your radar? Did you go seeking that? Or is that something that had found you in terms of looking for help for that? Like, where did that idea then come from that, hey, it might be this?
I went back to my therapist that I had been seeing for several years. And I was like, I think you might be right. Like, I'm missing something. And they were like, I've wanted you to get tested for a while, Abby. And I'm like, yeah, that was a great wish. But no, I didn't want to get tested. I didn't want to have anything wrong with me. I just wanted it to be like, oh, I'm struggling in some way, but I'll figure it out.
So you were reluctant.
Oh yeah, I didn't want to go. No.
What was under?
Fine,
I mean, what else was under that? Yeah.
What, therapist under it? What? I think I grew up in a household with really high achieving people, and I was different than they were in some ways. And so I didn't like the hard sciences in the same way that they did. And so I figured like, no, there's something wrong with me in that I didn't fit the mold of we're going to go on to medical school. And so I didn't want something else to be wrong. I was the one who who persisted and who kept going and tried and tried and tried and tried. And I just wanted that kind of, I would use the word narrative, like that story to propel me.
Yeah.
I didn't want it to be like a physical problem. I had enough physical issues, stuff going on that I didn't want to add. I wasn't interested in adding. It's fine. And then my pre-doc just stopped me. And so I went back and I asked for help, which stunk. And I found a really nice assessor in Los Angeles who said that he'd work with me and that he'd kind of like cut me a deal. He'd use some new software and touching face. Use some new software and he'd see. And I took the tests and I was like, oh, they're fine. I'm sure they don't show anything. And I
And
was
he was
sorely
like,
wrong.
no,
He's
no,
like,
they
this is,
do.
he's like, I mean, at first I think I was such like a know-it-all snit in a way that he had us do a house tree person,
Uh-huh.
which is like one of those like kind of wannabe projective tests. And I was like, this is fun. I love drawing. So I just started drawing it, and then he got it and he's like, oh, Abby. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I just had to draw it out. I've studied these tests. This is wrong. You know, all the material you're learning is wrong. But it was nice to have the chance to just like have fun with it. But because he saw me as a professional, he talked to me like a real person.
That's nice.
I felt like it's surprisingly hard to find sometimes. So I felt like, oh, I could be a human being who had this too.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and now you were reluctant, though often folks, the stories I've heard a lot have been
Yeah.
through, there's a stat out there that people have been through like an average of 3 therapists and 6 different antidepressant medications
Ooh,
before getting a
really?
diagnosis of ADHD. So there are some people who are like, have tried, kind of over and over again and may
Yeah.
feel dismissed, but it sounds like you did not get that experience in the folks that you were working
No.
with, which is great.
No, the folks were kind of boop, put it in there, and I was like, I don't know what you're doing. Like, granted, I have ADHD inattentive type, so I'm good at being inattentive. But even I caught it and was like, boop, and I just couldn't. You know, after 7 years of
Yeah.
working in psychoanalysis and a feminist psychoanalysis, I got like, oh, there might be something going on here.
There might be something here to this.
There might be something.
So then this maybe goes to the heart of the question that I
Yeah.
wanted to talk with you about today,
Ew.
which is, all right, so here you are on internship.
Mhm.
Part of the impetus, the reason that you were going to get tested and looked at for this is because, your coworkers, employers were frustrated
Oh yeah.
at your performance and not
Angry.
quite performing, angry. Did you think about kind of the issue of disclosing this to them, when this came about? Did you do it? And, what kind of, were you reluctant to?
No, I wasn't reluctant because I was like, oh, well, I have, the law on my side. Once I disclose it, they're going to have to protect me, and they're going to have to figure out reasonable accommodations for me. So, yay, being in graduate school, they're going to have to support me. And the graduate school program is going to have to come and support me too. And so is the APA, and the APA, the board is going to have to come and support me. After all, this is a prestigious university, this is what they do.
Uh-huh.
And I'm finally, me, little old, I went to small liberal arts college, is finally at a prestigious place. They're going to take me seriously and try to stand by me,
I'm guessing by your tone that didn't happen.
No, it didn't. It was horrible.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thanks. Yeah, no, I ended up leaving the placement. The board didn't, the like APA, I talked to the APA chair at the time, and they're like, there's nothing we can do. We don't, we can't support you here. They didn't want to take me back if I took a leave of absence. They wanted to pretend this hadn't happened. And for many years living in the shame of like, you placed to an APA, like the best, and the best told you no after they got you. And like lines of like, you couldn't be that bad.
Yeah.
I don't believe you were as bad as they say you were. And I was like,
yeah,
thanks. It doesn't really help to be licensed later. But it was interesting, and I learned a tremendous amount. I got to talk to a lawyer and figure out what to do. I got to figure out to talk to school and figure out how they could accommodate me for later. I got to use all my advocacy skills to support myself, and I got to go back to school anyway, have some remedial help, and go on and do another KPIC internship, which is like a half-time internship, and graduate. And I took that year to get in shape, which was fun, like, all right, didn't know I could run. It's good to know. And what else did I do? In shape, I ate a lot of chocolate, which, is important.
Right.
And I wrote my dissertation.
How was that for you?
I joined a great coaching group, actually, and it was hard, but I got through it. I was studying a population I loved, and I was like, that old persisting
Mm-hmm.
kind of came back, and I realized, I actually do have a lot of skills in this. And, I'm really sorry that they couldn't meet my needs, and that if I had the oomph, I could have pursued it a
Yeah.
lot further legally. I ended up using some EAP counseling that was offered at the site, like that was offered to all employees at this university. And so they were really helpful. And they were like, they should be accommodating you. And I'm like, yes, but they're not. And they're like, well, come back even if you've left.
Okay.
Come back and use as many resources as we can provide. We're going to make this better for you.
Yeah.
So,
So you had to work
yeah.
hard to
Oh,
advocate
yeah.
for yourself and your
Yeah.
needs and really kind of take it to the mat and stuff like
Yeah.
that.
And I got offers of employment for other supervisors who were like, I can't believe this is going down like this, Abby. Like, if you need it, come work for me. We'll figure it out together. So it's not like the whole department was grumpy pants. I think they just, to use a clinical term, I think they were confused, and they didn't seem like they wanted to provide as much help.
Uh-huh.
They wanted someone who could kind of go with the flow, and I
Okay.
wasn't that person.
Uh-huh.
So,
Do you regret the experience?
depends on the day.
Mhm.
I think I regret not listening to my gut that said that I should have gone to a different university counseling center that was more warm and fuzzy and more interested in long-term dynamic work.
Mhm.
That going to a placement that focused even on short-term dynamic wasn't really a good fit for me. And that it would probably have been better to go to a more like East Coasty place, because that's where I'm from. The vibe was very different.
Mhm.
And so I got interviews at a bunch of schools, and I picked this one based on how different it was for me than me, rather than how much it felt like a me place. It felt like the place I wanted
Yeah.
versus the school that I am, So
So
it was
from
good
this
to,
experience that you've had and going through this and having to advocate for yourself and
Mhm.
and kind of coming through on the other end and really kind of having the perseverance to stick through
Yeah.
it. What kind of wisdom would you have to share with other adults who might feel they might be in a situation that isn't terribly supportive to what they need?
To read if they like reading, or listen to books or awesome live Facebook, Zoom meetup things, to kind of figure out what accommodations they want to ask for. Slowly but surely, I've started to kind of gather together resources, especially like NOLO presses, which has like something on 504 plans and IEPs. And while they're based for kind of elementary school and up, I found a lot of their languaging around what kind of accommodations they're asking for can really hold true for adults. And so knowing what are the kinds of specific accommodations that would make your work life better,
Mm-hmm.
to know them before you go in is vital. Because
To know what you're asking for and to
know
yeah.
what would be helpful for you. And maybe that, I think, would be helpful to talk to a psychologist about it. I didn't say it in my spiel, but I do have a little section on the gift of ADHD
Mhm.
to helping people deal with grief and loss when they figure out that they have ADHD. Because there's a period of relief. And then there's, at least what I found with clients, there's like, and myself, there's like, oh, thank goodness, someone can explain why I feel so messed up. But then there's the, oh my goodness, now what?
Yeah.
So working with someone to figure out the now what, I think is vital.
And also I know for me there was
Yeah, tell me.
the element of why hadn't anyone thought about this
Yes.
before in all of the things that struggled with throughout life. Why is it now in my 30s
Wow.
that
Yeah.
yeah um why hadn't that? And I know a lot of people kind of do struggle a bit with that.
Yeah, I was angry.
Yeah, I mean, it's a part of
I mean,
grief, isn't it?
smiling,
I
incongruent affect.
mean,
Oh,
what made you the most angry about it?
I went to a private school my entire life,
Mhm.
and I had testing. All of us were tested for some sort of LD, learning difference.
Mhm.
And I remember I read the passage so quickly, and I was like, let's talk about it. I'm so excited. I love reading because I could kind of hyper focus. Oops.
Mhm.
I was like, all right, I'm ready. Let's do this. And they're like, get out of here. Like, you obviously don't have a learning difficulty at all or a learning difference, because you read it so quickly and you're wanting to talk about it and all these things. So
Yeah.
I was never tested again.
Yeah.
So their assumption, like, why didn't anyone say anything to me?
Yeah.
What? I was so angry. I mean, that's when I was like 5 or 6.
Yeah.
But like this idea of like women with inattentive, that we get lost in our daydreams and never to come back. I couldn't believe it. And my parents are amazing, and they got me like every tutor, even a tutor, like came from a place of privilege. And so they had access to these resources. So they got me a tutor to help me prioritize my assignments, and figure out how to prioritize. I'm like, why didn't it ever occur to you that I couldn't prioritize? That by the end, I was just like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because I didn't know what the hell I was doing. Heck, I was doing. You know?
Yes.
I didn't know how to prioritize. I didn't know what that mean. They were like, well, I thought you had such a great experience. And I was like, no, I mean, I really liked his kitchen, and he was a really nice guy, and I appreciated how much effort he took, but I had no idea what he was saying.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm angry at all the ways they missed it and all the reasons they thought that it couldn't be me. That somehow I was different, but not in a way that needed special attention or help.
Yeah.
Not special, but something,
and some of what you said kind of goes to a message that I think is really important to me. It's like, just because you weren't struggling in school as a child doesn't mean that there aren't signs of this there. And in fact, it is often true in folks who are diagnosed as an adult. It's not that you necessarily see really bad performance in school all the time. Some of us were able to do quite well in school and maybe even excel in a number of ways, but it doesn't mean that we didn't have kind of struggles that were going on, difficulty in regulating emotions, difficulty with executive functioning type stuff, social type difficulties. I mean, right? But it isn't necessarily a loud bouncing off the wall behavioral problem.
Right.
Those folks can kind of catch your attention, but that doesn't mean that this kind of challenge isn't there. Let me shift in a whole different direction and ask you about the idea of relationship, spouse, marriage, parents.
What?
Disclosing to those kind of folks.
What do you mean? Who's disclosing to who?
Disclosing a ADHD diagnosis to a dating partner, a spouse, to your parents.
I mean, I've read some of the literature on it. Like for me, I disclosed a lot of things to my parents that they didn't agree I had. So for years, I've been telling them that I have ADHD and attentive type. And they're like, oh, but do you really? I mean, you say you do, but do you really? And I'm like, which one of it is them? It is like, it's like, well, my dad kind of, but my mom, so it's taken them years. And then my wife had to see me through it. So she was an amazing support system. But it's certainly impacted our relationships, which is why I keep reading about how it impacts relationships.
Awesome. Okay, so I was just checking. I'm just checking over on the page here. I'm trying to get. This is a first for us. So I'm trying to line up how to watch this while watching the live stream and engagement over there.
I'm grateful I don't have to watch it, because I would be so distracted. I don't know about you, but just theoretically, I'd be like, what?
Right? Yeah, it's like squirrel. So your parents weren't supportive though either, is what you were saying.
They're supportive in that they want me to succeed, but they don't, like, I have a bunch of other stuff going on. And so a bunch of medical stuff that's left me as kind of like the IP. And so I think they didn't want something else. And they didn't, for me, ADHD is co-occurring in people with my DNA, and the symptom, like there's a bunch of things that are aligned with it, but the research like the meta-analysis of people with this DNA didn't come out until years later. So like, or at least newer research didn't come out that really said anything. So they were just like, didn't want something else. They didn't want to be responsible for something else, for making their kid's life worse. And they felt tremendous guilt. And they're such great parents. They try so hard. And I didn't want to make them feel bad by telling them I had something, but I also wanted them to recognize what they're missing.
Yeah.
By not knowing.
So there was guilt there for you.
Tremendous. And I think for them, to the point where they were like, didn't want to hear it, you know? Now they're like, oh, like, you say you're a little more flighty when you don't take your medicine. I was like, gotta go. Like,
about the other side, well, like, what would be some of the benefits of maybe sharing or disclosing to other people?
I'm kind of a big fan of disclosing at times. I think it's really helpful so that people know how to kind of prep. Like, I think had I met my wife after a diagnosis, I think it would give a clearer sense of like, oh, this is why she's late a lot. And okay, you know, this is something we can work on early. It's not just like, oops, it's like a thing, you know? Maybe she could get some more support from other people.
Yeah.
Although looking at the chat rooms and stuff, I wouldn't recommend that anyone in a relationship looks on the chat rooms around ADHD, because it's just like, you're SOL. Sorry. But really to be able to like have a conversation about it, because I find that some of the things that I do that irk the crud out of her are also ADHD related things.
For example,
having a discussion early. I think I'm really good at starting tasks, but not so good at finishing them. I used to say it was because I'm an Aries. And now that I'm in Southern California, I feel like I should just stick with that. But it's really, I'm like, let's do it. I'm all gung ho about this. It's so fun. And then 2 seconds later, I'm like, we're good. Like, I'll just, like, let's see, what do I do? Unload half of the dishwasher.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And she's like, well, then I have to unload it. What's the point? And I was like, yeah, but I did half of it. Like, yay, me. And she's like, And she's awesome biggest one, and wonderful. But
I know biggest one for me is the time management element, where it's like, I'll be home in 10 minutes, or I'll send a text. Yes. I'll be home in 10 minutes. Half an hour later, when I'm sort of embedded in something and the time has slipped away, and it's like, wait, what time is it right now? Is it 5 o'clock already? And just getting lost in those kind of things. And so I've really had to work hard to, set a timer, you set a timer. It's like, it goes back to elementary school mythology. Like, if you're going into the labyrinth, you make sure that you have a thread that you can follow to the way back out.
Nice.
And so having a timer is just this kind of link back to the real world.
Yes. And I like that Alexa, at least in our house, I admit it, she has timers and you can set them with words. So I'm like, this is, change my kid's diaper timer, or this is get out of your wormhole, Abby timer, whatever it might be. So yeah, no, timers are amazing.
So speaking of time management, I'm going to have to wrap us up. Even no timer set, but maybe it's the internal one is dinging.
That's
but I want to ask you, like, do you have a kind of final thought about, what are the benefits of maybe telling other people, and maybe, owning the diagnosis of ADHD in ways that at first you really didn't want to?
Oh, that's in its own an awesome conclusion. Let's see. I actually think it's pretty much a gift to have ADHD. I can follow people's random tangents like all over the place. I didn't realize this was a skill, but it actually is. And so when someone's sitting in my office and they're tangenting, whatever, lots of tangents all over the place, I have no problems following them. It's actually an ease. It feels like a comfort. It's a different way of connecting, and it feels like it's its own language. So I actually really find it to be both an art and a science, as psychology is. and a gift. And I think allowing other people in to see this world is wonderful. Yeah, with all of the weird wonkiness around it, I really have learned a tremendous amount about myself and about, you know, what I can tolerate and what I love to just get lost in. It's been a wonderful new world, and I wouldn't have it any other way. So,
Well, Dr. Abi
fan.
Weissman, thank you so much for following my tangents today
Yay!
and for joining us to do this. And if folks are looking for help in San Diego, where can they find you?
Wavepsych.com, please, or to call 619-403-5578. And now that we're mental health, anywhere in California.
Anywhere in California.
Ta-da! It would be a delight. Yay.
Awesome. Thank you so much for doing this today.
Thanks for having me. What a blessing. Yay.